We'll go ahead and get things started on Saturday. We have the Browns -2 at the Texans, over under 44.5. These teams played in week 16, I believe, with the Browns winning 36 to 22. However, in that game, CJ Stroud did not play. So, I mean, obviously, that's a big, huge difference, between CJ Stroud and Davis Mills or Case Keenum, whoever. I think Case Keenum played in the beginning of that game, and then Davis Mills took over. But I mean, the final score was made it seem a little bit closer, 36-22. It was really 36-7 in the fourth quarter, and the Texans kind of scored a couple late touchdowns to make it, I guess, a little bit more respectable with a backup quarterback. But we know how good the Browns defense is. But how do the Texans handle coming off basically a playoff win last week? They went on the road and won a playoff game last week. How do they handle that? They're a young team. How are their emotions? Are they just happy with that? Are they going to be too amped up, too emotional? And I mean, that does happen when you're a young team, and I think it's very possible that can happen to them this weekend, and they come out too amped up. Also, another question mark for the Texans is, do they have anybody else other than Nico Collins? They obviously have injuries, and that hurts them drastically. But can somebody other than Nico Collins step up? Because they're going to have to beat the Browns. Nico Collins isn't going to be able to beat the Browns by himself. I believe, the Texans defensively, we saw, when they played in week 16, Amari Cooper went for he went for 265. He had 11 catches for 2 tutties. That's ridiculous. But I believe, the Texans have to put Stingley on him. And if Stingley's not on him, they have to double him. They cannot let Amari Cooper do that to them again. Like, it was ridiculous what he was doing. I'm pretty sure Joe Flacco almost had 300 yards in the first half. Like, it was nuts what they were doing. But for this game, I like the Browns money line. If you get it right now, it's sitting at about -136. If you can't get the Browns money line, if you don't like it, I like them -2.5 too. But I'm okay with taking the -136. I believe the experience of the Browns is going to be the difference, along with the fact that the Texans have basically already played a playoff game. They're banged up. The Browns got to rest last week. I know people are always like, oh, well, they might come out rusty. I don't see it that way, especially when you're a veteran team. They have a great defense. They have a veteran quarterback. They can run the ball. They got a good offensive line, and they got weapons. Even if they come out slow, I think they'll be fine. I don't call it rust, but you just start the game slow. And I think the Texans are just too young. I think too much emotion is going to go into this for the Texans. How just a couple years ago, we thought they were dead. Nobody had them making the playoffs this year. Not only did they make the playoffs, but they won their division. Nobody had them doing that. I think they're going to be amped up too much, and I like the Browns to finish it off. For the second game on Saturday night, this is going to be a great game. The Dolphins +4 at the Chiefs, over under 44.5, below 0 temperatures during this game, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, for the Dolphins, just think about that. They don't play good on the road to begin with, and now they have to play in sub-0-degree weather. Yeah, that just doesn't even sound fun. For the fans that are going to that, I applaud you and I respect you, but I couldn't watch a football game in that. But this is Tyreek Hill's first game back in Arrowhead, since being traded from the Chiefs to the Dolphins. Kind of wondering, are the Chiefs thinking maybe they made a mistake and should have moved on from Kelsey instead of Hill? Kelsey's kind of looked like he's regressed. Now the Chiefs did get a Super Bowl out of it, so I don't want to say that too much because they did ultimately get a Super Bowl out of it. But maybe they are having second thoughts about that, especially the way Tyreek looks. But the Dolphins this year have no wins on the road versus a team with a winning record, which is just, I mean, you go 11-6 and you can't beat a team with a winning record on the road. That's ridiculous. Also, the Dolphins, the most points they've scored on the road this season was 20 points. These teams already played once this season, and the Chiefs won the game 21-14. I'm kind of am curious, though, how do the Chiefs handle playing in the wild card? The Chiefs haven't had to play in the wild card for 5 years now. Since Mahomes took over, they've had a bye. Luckily for them, at least this week's at home, so if they can make it past this, and they have another hurdle for the first time in 5 years, playing on the road in the playoffs. But this week, it's playing in the wild card. They're used to resting this week. They did get to rest last week, but they're used to having 2 weeks of rest. So I wonder how that's gonna affect them. Also, with it being so cold, you can only think that the drop problems that the Chiefs have had this season are just going to get worse because I mean, if you can't catch a ball when it's warm, how are you going to catch one when it's cold? It hurts, it's hard, it sucks, it is no fun. For this game personally, I like the under 44 and a half. Chiefs have had their struggles. It's cold, cold, cold. It's going to be ridiculously cold. The Dolphins, a completely different team on the road. Obviously, you don't have a win against a team with a winning record. I think the Chiefs, are able to control the ball and run the clock because who are they going to throw it to? You can't trust people to catch the ball. Now it's going to be that cold. I'm sure there's going to be wind. I think the Chiefs try to run the ball and control the clock. And like I said, the Chiefs won 21-14 when this game was played. I want to say it was in London. And Mahomes only threw for 185, and the conditions were fine. So I can see this game being a low-scoring game. I'm not sure who wins it, but I like the under 44 and a half. I think that total is way too high for how cold it's going to be. I also have one player prop that I love in Saturday night between the Chiefs and the Dolphins. I like Isaiah Pacheco over 64 and a half rushing yards. He hit this in 2 out of 3 playoff games a year ago. And with the weather and it going to be extremely cold, Mahomes only throwing for 185 in good conditions versus Dolphins defense. I expect Pacheco to get anywhere from 15 to 20 carries and easily go over this number. But that is all I have for Saturday in the NFL playoffs.